Let's get started. Mr. Daga and Mrs. Gillespie will not be attending this evening, personal reasons. So we'll get started with the meeting. First thing up is our student rep to the board. Grant, welcome again.
So good evening, everyone. It's good to be back. So the first thing I have for you is that AP exam season is upon us. All of last week and the rest of this week, students will be showing off all the hard work they did to the organization known as the College Board, and hopefully they'll be getting some credit for in college if they pass the exam and whatnot. On Friday, there was the Mr. Great Valley Show. I participated in myself, along with many other people. No. I'm glad I didn't.
I was going to say, I think that meant you won if you didn't win, right?
Yeah. So Dyson Kennedy actually won. He performed a TED Talk about nothing. It was incredibly funny. And Ben Nerthen, who performed stand-up, won Mr. Congeniality. And collectively, it raised about $2,000 for the Chrissy Character Award, which is a scholarship that seniors receive at the Senior Awards later this year. Likewise, seniors have a lot coming up in the next few weeks. So the senior dinner is next week on May 17th. And also senior prom is the same week on Saturday, May 20th. Last week, there was the spring concert, the spring choir concert. And since it was on May 4th, Star Wars Day, I heard they even performed a little bit of the Star Wars music. Junior prom was on April 29th last weekend. And they also held their after prom at the high school, which I believe was a beach luau Hawaiian theme. The Chester County Envirothon competition was recent. And Great Valley students had an amazing showing, and they placed third in it this year. And finally, student body officer elections are also underway. Students have started to put posters up, and I believe they will shortly present their speeches on the morning show. And hopefully we'll see what our student body officers team turns out to be for the next year. Thank you.
Thank you. And I assume also replacements for yourself. And all righty. IU report.
Yes. The IU, we met on April 19th, and the CCIU Board of Directors reviewed in the first reading the draft of the 2017-18 marketplace budget. Joe O'Brien, CCIU Executive Director, and Joe Lubitsky, CCIU Director of Administrative Services, presented the 2017-18 draft budget to board members and answered questions. The CCIU Board will vote on the marketplace budget on May 17th. A key point made by Joe Lubitsky was that the cost of marketplace programs for purchase by Chester County District would decrease by 0.24%. Then Dr. Jacqueline Aris, Director of Student Services, and Ms. Kristen Gallahan, Principal of the CCIU Learning Center, welcomed board members. They presented on the recent reorganization that was completed using a new employee training program. The goal of the program was to increase the utilization of best practices amongst the staff working with students that have significant emotional and behavioral needs. The 2-week training program is given to new staff upon hire and includes various module platforms such as live-in training, computer-based or job-embedded training, and job shadowing. Some of the implications of this training program have been that newly hired staff are ready to work upon being placed in new positions. Highly trained staff are available within the classrooms to provide proactive behavior support rather than the students having to be removed from the classroom, and finally, students trained across programs to provide support in any classroom or position. All in all, a very positive experience for all involved. And then Dr. Jacqueline Aris, the Director of Student Services, and Mr. Ian Strackman, Director of Human Resources, gave an update on one of the CCIU's organizational goals for 2016, Administrators on Assignment Program. This provides short and long-term solutions for our districts and charter schools. The program began in 2011 when we were asked to provide 2 special education supervisors for one of our districts. We learned at that time that there were some unexpected challenges. We underestimated the time, cost, knowledge, specific district operations. Since then, we've made necessary changes and expanded our services to all areas of education, including teachers and administrative support. The advantage to our districts is that the person hired has access to all CCIU resources and divisions. They get to participate and attend CCIU JABA-like group meetings, and they are assigned a dedicated primary contract as well as a technical point of contact. The program continues to grow, and we are getting more and more requests from our districts to provide either short or long-term help in filling certain positions. Then in finance, the board of directors at the IU, we acted on the following. We approved the 2017-18 core and occupational education budget. And then we considered in the first reading the 2017-18 marketplace budget and price schedule. And then in new business, the board of directors approved the opening of a new program called OVR Connections Classroom. And then in personnel, the board of directors approved all recommended personnel action items, including routine terminations, resignations, retirements, nominations, change in status, creation of positions, supplemental salaries, and pay rates. And the next board of directors meetings will be held May 17th, 7:30 at the Educational Service Center in Cebu Road, Downingtown. And then I'd like to say that I was recently asked for more information on the occupational education budget that was presented to this board last week. And the Great Valley Board was asking for a rationale behind the increase, which they felt was excessive. This 19.5% is averaged over 3 years. The tuition did not increase, but we have sent more students. But my recommendation to the board is that if anyone wants more information on this, as other districts have done, is to have Dr. O'Brien come in or Joe Lubitsky come in to give you the details of the budget. So that's what I'd recommend. And then if you want any further details tonight, I would refer this to Mr. Linderman. And that concludes my report.
My quandary with the budget isn't the details on the budget. I understand the details. My quandary is the way they budget. So I would be really happy to have them come and, bring their team if they want. But I understand exactly how they got to the number. I just want to make sure that if they do come, they come with the presentation that's actually valuable to us. Because, it's not a cut and dry math equation. And I think that the thing that affects us with the 19.5%, I would love for them to come here. Regina, if we're all in agreement, or the majority, I would love for them to come here, because I have at least 10 questions that I would really like to ask them about the budget and also their budgeting process, to see if maybe they would be able to get to something that might be a little more equitable overall, rather than this 3-year cycle that they have, some years being worse for other districts than other years.
I don't think we should do that. They have a board. We have a representative on that board, and that's the purpose of that. It's not our job, at least 8 of us, to dive into those details. If you've got questions, I'm sure Joe and whoever over there would be happy to answer them for you. But that's what Carol's responsibility is, and the other representatives from the county that make that up. And I'm not sure that's to our best interest to jump into some of those details.
I don't
As far as trying to get them in here to answer questions all the way down to how they budget and all that, that's why they have a board. That's my feeling, at least.
My only issue with that, Dave, is our board representative did ask, and they said, well, we'll come out and talk to you. Like, their answer to Carol's question that was posed by the board was, well, we have to come out to answer that for you. So if they're not going to answer our representative to the board's questions, I am not adverse to having them come out. I would prefer that they have like a 5-minute, 50,000-foot presentation, and then we can ask whatever questions. I don't want to sit here for half an hour and listen to them talk to me about how they budget for all kinds of incidental things. I think if we had a budget that went up 20% every year, people would really not be happy with us.
But the question was answered, that their budget didn't go up 20%. Their overall budget went up 2.1%, I think is what the number was. And our share went up 20% because we were sending, I forget what it is, 10 more kids than we did. It was 40 last time and 50 this time,
Yeah.
or
But they
whatever the
still
number.
haven't-
Yeah, no, let me just go over, I
So-
know last month when you asked the question, I kind of tried to give maybe the moonshot view of it, is our enrollment was up, some enrollments were down, so disparately, we paid more. As the superintendent and I analyzed the numbers with Mrs. Palmaccio last week or the week before, whenever we did that, again, I'm still on vacation time, so I can't remember if I guess it was last week. Our enrollment this year is we have 84 kids there, or what they call 55.3 full-time equivalent. Last year, we had 42. I mean, that is well over a 20% increase just from last year to this year. Year before, we had 44. So they do a 3-year average. Of course, that 55 is now, so we had 3 years before, and the year before that was, so 4 years ago, the number was 42. So last year, you were averaging 42, 44, and 42. This year, you're averaging 44, 42, and 55 and a half, or almost a half. So the number goes up. You look at a school district like Phoenixville, it was going the other way. You know, they were, I don't know, I don't have their number in front of me because we just spent time analyzing our number. But if they were 100, 100, 100, now they're 100, 100, and this year was 80. So they went down. So it makes it a little disparaging. I will tell you, they budget exactly the same way we do, the exact same way everybody in the state does. The difference between the IU budget and the tech school budget and us is they then have to pro-rata that as equitably as possible between all the schools in the county that send students there. And years ago, throwback years ago, we begged them to not go on a year-to-year budget because if it was year-to-year, our increase would have been worse going year-to-year. We went to a 3-year average, kind of flattens things out a little bit, would have been higher this year if it was a 1-year average. And when they disbanded the vocational technical school individual school boards, they used to be individual, and consolidated them into the IU running them, we tried to get it more equitable countywide too. So that's probably more than you wanted even from a presentation from them, but
Well, I think I kind of understood that already. I guess my question is, they're saying that they can educate more students with the same, and 100 students at however much money it is. Like, if we added 100 students into the high school, it would be I would think, it would be difficult for us to provide all of our same services with exactly the same staff. Are you saying that 100 students for them is really easy to absorb? Like, I'm just trying to understand from a standpoint, you know, Ellen, maybe you can.
Yeah, see, and this is my point. So we're all in the same business here. We know that we can put a certain number of kids into certain classes before our numbers go up, because we know in some classes we're under the threshold of where we have to get a new room or have another teacher. Okay, so we have doubled our enrollment that we're sending to the CCIU. Other districts are in the same situation. So we know just from us, it's over 40 kids more this year than it was last year. If we're at 80 and we were at 40, oh, we're 50, okay. So, all right. So when they say we have no increase in our budget this year, how is that? When you have us and you have other districts.
What he said is, if you read it carefully, what he said was, there's no increase in the per student tuition.
Correct.
So if you have, it doesn't matter. He's saying, what he said was, there's no increase per student, okay? So if you have more students, you're going to pay more, because it's number of kids times
Correct.
tuition. If you have
Correct.
less students, you'll pay less.
So let me
That's
go a
what he's
little
saying.
further on the 3-year average. So this year, for the first time in known history, Phoenixville has actually less FTEs than Great Valley at the tech school. They have 52.2, we have 55.3. Their budget is 300,000 more than ours because of the way the 3-year average works. So their budget is 1.2 something million, ours is 970. So it will work itself out. We will pay more than Phoenixville if this trend stays the same eventually. So, that's, as a look, they're actually going up in enrollment there, but it's only 42 kids is what their projection is. They're projecting 1,080 kids. They had 1,038 this year. So, and don't think that I'm that smart with all these numbers. I opened up some notes that Joe Lubitsky sent me on the IU budget here so I could sound smart.
So Carol, you have to vote for this budget along with the other 11 districts. Or the budget's already been voted on?
Voted on it.
Okay.
Oh, no, the IU, we voted on the other night, and we passed it, and of course, we passed it to get it out into the schools to be voted on.
Do you, and this is just a question you may not know the answer to, but so 12 represented districts voted for this. Do you think there was a good understanding among the ranks as to the budget, the process, and the numbers?
I think so. 4 of the schools weren't happy with it, and it is looked over, and it is gone over. And then they make their decisions. They're educated about it. You're welcome.
Sending you out there to do it, not, thank you.
Feel there's a need to bring him in? Okay, just making sure. All right. So, yeah. Well, I mean, Joe and his staff have always offered that if you'd like to meet with them or one-on-one, and he's very accommodating as far as that goes, so. And you probably go over for a nice lunch that the students will make for you. All right, so moving on to program and General Wayne Outdoor Classroom.
As Mrs. Citron's getting ready, I really want to thank Mrs. Citron and her team in all of the work that has gone into not only proposal and then refinements and working with Mr. Abraham. So thank you so much, and I'm very excited to see your presentation.
Okay. That might have been purposeful that I forgot that. Good evening, Great Valley School Board, Dr. Speaker Polubinski, and Mr. Linderman. Thank you very much for having us tonight. We're excited to share with you our proposal for the General Wayne Outdoor Classroom. With me tonight, who will be helping to present and share our ideas, I have our co-president from the General Wayne PTO Board, Jen Benson, Heather Stairs and Amy White, fourth grade teachers from General Wayne, Kyle Litsky, architect from Arcus in Malvern, Tony Dufour, landscape architect, also business in Malvern, and Jim Abraham, who's been with us and working with us through the process. So thank you. Okay. Okay. In May 9th, 2003, a fourth grade student, Sarah McHatton, passed away tragically in an automobile accident. When this event happened, it shook the General Wayne school community. The PTO, administration, faculty worked together to come up with a way to honor a student who had been with us since kindergarten and made a lasting impact on all of us at General Wayne. We decided at that time, as I said, administrators, teachers, PTO board members, that we would honor her with a space out back. And we kind of had a ribbon cutting ceremony, and it was termed Sarah's Picnic Grove. And we have picnic tables that represented the area. There were further plans, but at that point, the furthest we had gotten with the project was the groundbreaking with the family there and the picnic tables. So the PTO board came to me about 4 or 5 years ago, and we were talking about projects at General Wayne, and I brought up this project that, at the time I was the assistant principal, that I would like to see completed in Sarah's behalf. When we are out back and I'm thinking about it, I felt like this was a project that we needed to bring to completion in her honor. And so we decided to start meeting. The PTO board, we had some parents join us, and we decided to kind of take this space and look at it maybe in a different way, given that we are now 13 to 16 years later from where we were, and times have changed, our students have grown, and our curriculum has changed, and we thought, how can we look at this a little bit differently? The project we're going to talk to you about today is in 3 phases. We're asking you tonight to consider phase 1. The PTO has the funding to support this, so we'll be looking for your approval to move forward with phase 1. And we're hoping anticipated completion fall 2017, hopefully. The plans that we have that we'll be sharing with you tonight have been developed through teachers, building and district administrators have been involved in the process, as well as looking at partnerships in our community. We reached out to Tony and to Kyle Litsky to help us with the project, as well as we're looking at other Malvern businesses to help us and grow partnerships for our school. Okay, I'm going to turn the next part of the presentation over to Mrs. Benson and our teachers at General Wayne. Mrs. White, Mrs. Stairs.
So the first thing that we're interested in doing is creating a unique learning atmosphere that can be integrated with the K-12 curriculum. And over the past few years, we've been working really hard to develop reading skills in specific to envisioning. And so one of the ways that Amy and I were talking about how this could really help students is in envisioning in other subject areas. So, for example, going out for creative writing and using the nature around for multisensory writing opportunities, comparing and contrasting in social studies. So if we're studying regions per se in the upper grades, we could go outside and talk about what do you see here for the Northeast region, how would that look different for a Southwest region, and help the students to really picture some of the climate, some of the weather for the various subjects that they learn in other grades other than 4th grade, which Amy and I both teach. We're also thinking in the area of math and how solving real world problems, specifically we could go out there and easily come up with some fraction problems, some measurement problems, area and perimeter. Having a big open space would really allow for flexibility for a variety of lessons to keep the students engaged, because we keep thinking about how all the students learn so differently, and this multisensory approach across subject areas could really meet the needs of all of our diverse learners.
Hi. We also feel that it will support and enhance the curriculum that's already in place and the initiatives that we've already started. For example, in science, the environmental sciences, we have units of study at each grade level that could utilize this space. We have 1st grade does soil, 2nd grade butterflies, which we actually talked about doing some kind of eventual butterfly garden, because butterflies were actually Sarah's favorite thing. And 3rd grade, land and water. 4th grade, earth movements. In 5th grade, it's ecosystems. So we could bring our learning outside, which makes sense when you're talking about science, and even Envirothon, which I heard earlier tonight. The Envirothon group could even meet out there. It would also support our wellness initiative. There's so much research around mindfulness and how that helps children, and what better place than to be in a nice, natural environment to move about, breathe the fresh air, meditate, helps the kids grow in other areas as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jen Benson. I'm the PTO co-president at General Wayne, and I am very proud to stand in front of you today as a member of our parent-teacher organization to share our commitment to providing an outdoor classroom space to General Wayne. Tonight, we seek your approval to continue with this project. We are not seeking any funding, as this project will continue to be self-funded through the parent donations and community partnerships. We realize that with our budget, we will need to look within our district to find families with certain skill sets that will be beneficial to completing this project. We have already utilized such relationships by consulting with architect Kyle Litsky and landscape architect Tony DeFore, both Sugartown dads, to assist with the design and construction of this eco-friendly learning space. Without their generous donation of time and effort, we would not be here tonight. We are very excited to share the design with you and the plans for the outdoor classroom. Thank you so much for your time. Now I invite Kyle Litsky.
All right, now the fun stuff. We talk about what this thing could look like. So I got involved about a year ago with this wonderful group. Tony brought me in. Tony did a little work with Arcus on some residential stuff and knew what we were capable of and knew it was getting a little bit outside of his realm of expertise and into some building elements. So he brought me in. And thank God he did, because I don't know about you guys, but I was a kid once sitting in a classroom staring out the window. For me, it was chemistry. Maybe everybody else had their own subjects, but it kind of wandered off. And I used to stare out the window and think, God, why can't we be sitting outside? It's a beautiful day. I could be learning so much more. Chemistry could be so much more interesting out in that beautiful courtyard. So here's where we are. This is the site plan of General Wayne Elementary. Just to talk a little bit about the kind of natural boundaries of where the site is. So it's on what would be the north side of the main gymnasium. I guess that's the main gymnasium, right out the lower level. So the grade, you enter in, the main entrance, as everybody knows, is on the east or the west side here. The grade drops down around the back towards the gymnasium. So the east facade of that north bar has sort of a three-story reed to it. And then you have this natural barrier. This doesn't have a laser on it, does it? Oh, look at this. Has this sort of natural landscape barrier. These are some very tall, mature trees that sort of buffer the school from the neighborhood over here. And then so you have sort of the barriers of the school, and then the natural barrier, and then the pathway that exists that kind of leads you to the playground area. So already it's like the perfect spot. I mean, there's already this beautiful little place here, and I see why the memorial was placed where it was. It's kind of sits on the crest of this hill just off of the path under some trees. Very pleasant space. So really we're just going to try to enhance that space, and that's kind of what we're going to get into here. So the plan sort of, you'll see, is set up as a master plan. I mean, this is the full build out. So this is the type of project that will evolve over time. It will be a sequence of phases over maybe a year, every 2 years, depending on funding available, depending on volunteer support, depending on resources donated. So this is kind of showing the full build-out master plan. And then this is phase one. So I'm going to start with phase one, and then we'll work backwards to the master plan. Or forwards to the master plan, I should say. So phase one is really just creating a place. As basic a place as we can create for sort of a small budget, but enough of a place that people can gather, people can learn. We have the things that we need to have a classroom activity. So the first part would be sort of a screen element here. There's an existing transformer and some dumpsters that are out off of the parking lot area, just off of the gymnasium. And then this is a shed structure, about 384 square feet, not very big, but enough to house, planting equipment, school equipment, anything that would need to be out there for the classroom functions. And then this is a fence enclosure, be about 6 feet high, just to sort of screen off the dumpsters. And some planting along the edge. And then this is a natural pathway that is here now, or a concrete walk that's here now. So we would just kind of be picking off of that along where an existing macadam walkway is now. So that would bring you into the shed, and then we were creating this lawn area, which would be a natural grass lawn area or potentially a artificial turf area. And then that's kind of bordered by a gravel path around the edges, and then some natural plantings around the edges as well, just to sort of define the space. The edging of the space here and the pathway could either be done with some wood timbers or some stones. Again, that may come out of some of the volunteer efforts and some of the resources that might be available. So here's what this starts to look like in the 3D model. Again, just a simple lawn space, a place to gather, potentially a little stage area that's built for the kids to sort of interact. The shed structure is pretty basic. It would be sort of, an unclimate controlled, just open air structure that houses material, but also acts as a place, if it was raining, the kids could kind of get inside there. There might be a table or something inside, but there also could be, the door is like a mobile chalkboard, so it has your blackboards. Down the road, it may be some interactive whiteboards or something with more technology to it. But just a basic idea that this is kind of the head of the classroom. This is the theater of the classroom. Chairs could be simple as there's an existing tree that's going to be removed on site. The tree is in not very good shape, so taking it down is not a problem, and we could utilize the tree to create some stools, some seating that would be placed out and around the classroom area. Some other views. Again, some natural plantings just to utilize that screen wall along the edge. So phase 2, I think the important element of phase 2, which ideally if we could get it into phase 1 would have been the first try, but I think the reality of the budget means that this would be more likely a phase 2 element. So a simple open air structure that could utilize the solar gain with some PV panels on the roof. Eventually, I think initially we'd try to get some PV cells on the shed structure to generate some electricity out there, so it's sort of off the grid. The pavilion roof would then also house PV cells for solar gain. We'd probably introduce some rainwater barrels for rain harvesting. That would help kind of irrigate the plantings in the space and also be sort of an educational tool about how we can collect rain and use it to water plants and sustain the vegetation in the project. And just another view of extending that pathway out. The pathway sort of extends naturally towards the playground, but the idea would be that down the road you might introduce some high tunnels like they have over at Katie Markley that could potentially have you growing product for gardening through the seasons. So this is down the road. This thing evolves a little bit more into some water events, some irrigation, some, each classroom, each grade could potentially own one of these linear movements through the space that would have its own kind of dedicated beds for planting. It sort of evolves in and out on each side of the pavilion, but becomes part of the classroom. And so that's just an aerial view of the full master build-out. So again, not sure how many phases, how the phases evolve over the years, but it would all be dependent on resource and materials. These are just some precedent images of some things that I found online that I think kind of follow suit. This was one that was done in actually a stormwater management basin, so that it was able to collect the water from the surrounding parking lots areas and sort of irrigate it. It could be an educational process in that sense. It has this sort of tiered amphitheater element to it as well. Just basic things. I do a lot of higher ed work, and these are very popular in higher education, but honestly, I think the impact on elementary education is probably even more profound at this age. So I see this being a more popular thing for elementary schools. Simple structures could also kind of be introduced either as a mid-phase until the pavilion roof is built, or potentially in lieu of the pavilion roof. I mean, we talked about the butterflies. I mean, I could see some tensile structures, something lightweight type of canopy, fabric canopy that provides shade, but sort of evolves into a butterfly garden. I mean, I think these are the kind of things that could evolve into future phases. Just some images of some just good use of interior space within the courtyards of the existing schools. The stumps, again, as a way to sort of get some low-cost seating and some reuse of existing things on site. That's it. Any questions on the design?
So we're doing phase 1 now, Bonnie?
Yes.
And are we committed to phase 2 and phase 3?
The PTO and the school definitely are committed to finishing the project through to phase 3.
But right now, you're only looking for the board to approve moving forward with phase 1 being funded by you guys. We just need to
This time.
approve.
The donation from the
Yeah,
PTO.
because it's our property, that's all, right? I mean, that's the real purpose here, is to make sure we're on board with it and
Okay.
then allowing Jim and company to make sure it meets all the codes and standards of state and district.
So last year, when I went to the National School Board Convention, outdoor classrooms and atypical learning environments were the buzz nationwide. In particular, in the Northeast region, not so much in the South. But the data and evidence that was being shared at the time was that these outdoor classrooms and these atypical structures or opportunities, as they called them, not only were they the trend, but they were beginning to be a trend in this area because of the opportunities they provide for kids, given the fact that they don't all learn the same way. It has always bowled me over that we are the people that we are, and this is a fabulous thing for the PTO to take on. So I know I'm only one, but go, bring it. Thank you.
I had a quick question. As you build this out, do you have to go to the township for approval?
Yeah, well, this is why at some point it went way above Bonnie Citron as principal, and
Right.
we started to bring Jim on board, Mr. Abraham, and Kyle Litsky has been leading us and directing us on where we need to go. Like, do we need civil engineering licenses? Do we need township permits?
Yeah.
Yes, so they will be guiding us through all of that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
our next meeting would be with the township just to seek a waiver from a land development. Technically, you
Right.
shouldn't need a full land development. This would be just an ENS permit or
Yeah.
a grading permit application, which is very easy to get. I've already been in touch with Boucher and James, which is a civil engineering firm. They did some work on General Wayne back in 2000, so they already have all the data, all the topos, everything we would need. We just
Yeah.
need to have a conversation with the township to make sure we don't have to go through full land development.
Well, it shouldn't be a problem, and I wish you well and good luck on it. It's a great idea.
Full disclosure, I'm a General Wayne parent. I think it's a great idea. Two things that I thought of are, one, the school is not allowed to use food as a reward. For example, you can't tell kids, hey, if you do great on your math test, we'll give you a pizza party. Not allowed. But there's nothing in the rules against saying, hey, if you do great on your math test, we can have class outside. So I love that idea that it's a way to incentivize kids without needing to provide calories. I would also love if there was a possibility for kids to eat outside who brought their own lunches once in a while. I feel like I've heard a fair number of kids saying, hey, we don't have time to eat before we want to go outside, and if they're already outside, might be something that could also be a use of the space. But I think it's a great idea. Thank you, guys.
All right, so there's no more questions. So the goal, next week, we have to approve that they have the right to move forward by the board. So it'll be on the agenda for next Monday. Thank you.
Thank you
everyone.
so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Looks fun and exciting. We have
Thank
board
you.
meetings there. All right, the monthly reports are there, the enrollment report for review. Moving on to policy and the policy committee update. Steph?
Okay, I have an update to give you guys. I'm also going to walk around real quick and just hand out a few things. We are not going to be talking about dress and appearance this meeting, but it will be on for the May 30th policy meeting. However, I do have two policies from two pretty decent school districts just to show you what they've done in theirs. And then I also printed out policies on student activity fundraising as well, student activity funds. So let me quickly pass these guys out. Actually, I'll just pass them down. The first one I'll pass is 2 pages, and the next one is just 1 page. The next 2 are 1 pages, so. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get started just so we can get through this. Okay, the board committee on policies met on May 2nd. Jen, Dave, I were the board representatives there. We talked about policy 808, which is the food service administrative guidelines. Just so you guys are aware, at the high school level, the high school does not allow charging when the student account is in deficit. This applies to the a la carte charges. Meals may be charged. The elementary schools do allow deficit spending, and there's always room for exceptions to be made by talking to a manager within the cafeteria. So the goal is always, if kids need food, that we give them the food. Parameters are set in place to address delinquent payment with the parents by phone calls, letters, and emails via school messenger. So that was discussed right there. Are there any questions, comments on the food services administrative guideline? Okay. The next policy I'll talk about is policy 246, student wellness and administrative guidelines. Nicole Melia recommended that any reference to fundraising involving food be removed from the administrative guidelines and that no exemptions be allowed. Food sales during school hours are in violation of the district wellness program. And please note that the school day is defined as 12 a.m. to 30 minutes after the final school bell. In the administrative guideline, page 6, under nutrition guidelines for all food beverages available not sold, the committee discussed the issue of homemade food, and we also discussed the need for ingredients to be identified due to children with allergies. I strongly recommend that this board revisit the policy next year. I feel as though we're at a tipping point with the allergies, and with new data coming out and more awareness, I think that this policy will need to be very dynamic and adjust science as we learn more about allergies and how to keep our kids safe. Any comments on policy 246, student wellness, and the administrative guidelines? Okay, policy 220, student expression and the accompanying administrative guideline. This policy, the title is being changed from student expression / distribution and posting of materials to just student expression. This one of the premises of this one is, for example, yes, we all have free speech, but you can't yell fire in a crowded classroom unless there's a fire. So yes, free speech, but there are ways in which it can be curtailed for the safety of our students. The policy lays the framework in the administrative guidelines to address enforcement and allows flexibility to use administrative judgment. Dan Goffredo, who's unable to be here due to a prior commitment, stated that the principals did review the policy as written and had no objections. Questions, comments, concerns? Okay, policy 229 is student fundraising and administrative guidelines. This policy defines the different fundraising groups. The administrative guidelines details how the groups are governed. The administrative guideline also addresses online fundraising. And just to flag for you why, there's a line in there that states that donations for capital improvements in excess of $4,000 must be approved by the board. And my understanding was that that's the quotation limit. So that's why that number is in there, I believe. I just wanted everybody to know that that number's in there for a reason. And then I did bring in 2 other policies for comparison to look at, TE and Unionville Chadds Ford. And if you don't have them, I can email them out. But that's just as a comparison, because I said I'd bring in comparison from other schools. So if people are curious about what other schools are doing, they can read it. Questions, comments? Okay. Policy 230 is public performance by students and the administrative guidelines. The policy states that approval for participation by student groups must be board approved. The change will reflect that they must be approved, removing board. Under delegation of responsibility, the wording suggested by the attorney stating that overnight trips will be reported to the board, we'd like to change that to approved by the board. That was a recommendation by the committee. In the administrative guidelines under approval process, responsibility for overnight travel will be changed from reporting to submitting, and assistant superintendent will change to principal. We are striking a line that says, we're proposing to strike a line that says parental permission is required before students may participate in any public performance. There was discussion saying, hey, if there's a band performance at night, does this really mean that you need to have the parents approve that their kids are going to the band concert, especially when they're driving them themselves? So what we're proposing is strike that, because any trips outside the district will still be treated as field trips and will still need parental permission. So that there, you know, if you're going to Macy's to sing at a holiday festival, there will be permission slips in order. We talked about whether we needed a procedure to manage costs associated with public performances, but decided against it because right now they're done at no cost to the students in our district. Any questions, concerns on public performances? Okay, moving on to policy 231, classroom field trips and administrative guidelines. The committee clarified that trips from one school to another are not considered field trips and do not require permission slips. So for example, if the 5th grade class at Sugartown decides to go to the high school, that is not considered a field trip. And no permission slips will be sent home. The recommended change to the general guidelines and the administrative guidelines include, in all instances where there's a time limit, we propose saying just leave in advance. So for example, right now in the policy, there's lots of places where it says, you know, at least 3 weeks before blah, 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 and we're changing it just to be in advance, because there might be situations where an opportunity comes up last minute, and this way we can still comply with the policy. And it is very well known within our district that if you do want to get a bus and have the bus be available, that you need to do things in advance. So if you're trying to pull off a trip to Washington, D.C. and you get your buses the week before, you're not going to be going. And I think once people make that mistake once, it won't happen again. And I think that most are aware of this. Okay, the buses really are the limiting factors often with scheduling. Paragraph 3. Strike the last sentence that says the district shall pay for the cost of any substitute teachers required in connection with a pre-approved field trip. Paragraph 4, change provide transportation to schedule transportation. Paragraph 7, teacher responsible to submit the plan for adult supervision will be changed to and plan for adult supervision. The chart on page 2, and this is a pretty major change. Right now we have a chart on page 2 basically with recommended guidelines for ratios. The committee is suggesting that this chart be stricken in order to provide flexibility with the number of adults supervising. Recommended changes to the approval process procedures include, again, in all instances where there's a time limit, just leave the in advance, paragraphs 1, 5, and 7. Under the transportation guidelines paragraph or section in paragraph 1, limited number of buses rather than a designated number. Paragraph 5, permission will include or director of business affairs in addition to. Paragraph 7, we're proposing that the times of 8:45 a.m. and 1:45 p.m. be inserted. And paragraph 8, minor change, without written permission from the assistant superintendent or the director of business affairs instead of and the director of business affairs. Under the general procedures section, the sentence, all parents be advised of the opportunity to attend the field trip as chaperones, will be struck. And under trip modifications, cancellations in paragraph 2, line will be removed which relates to taxpayers, and the text in parentheses, i.e. parents, guardians, will be stricken. So that's a lot of changes, but I just wanted to walk through so that nobody was shocked at things. The big thing in here is just, in my opinion, is are we all comfortable not having the limits laid out for the how many the ratio of students to supervisors. And if you do have any thoughts on that, please say them now so we can look more into it if there are concerns. But we felt comfortable as a policy committee recommending this change. Okay, policy 232 is participation in school affairs. In the authority paragraph, bullet number 4 will be added to include student representative to the board. In paragraph 2, sentence 2, text related to the district website will be stricken. That's it on that policy. Policy 233, suspension and expulsion and the administrative guideline attachments. Paragraph 3 should say when the suspension reaches or exceeds 3 days. And attachment A, under formal expulsion hearing number 2, the word his should be removed. Policy 237, electronic devices and the administrative guidelines. Dan Griffredo reported that the attorney said the old version of the policy seemed outdated and restrictive with respect to electronic devices. Changes are proposed to the policy which promote the expanded use of electronics subject to regulations by school officials. The middle and high school principals were comfortable with the changes. In the definitions paragraph of the policy, iChat will be removed. Apparently that's not really used anymore. Just a general broad summary. At the high school level, devices can be carried. They don't need to be left in the locker, but they can't be disruptive. And no electronic devices can be used in the bathroom or locker room due to sensitivity around photos and privacy. Questions, concerns? And this is another one which will probably be changing rather rapidly, just a flag for people. Okay, there's a new policy on crowdfunding that will affect the 300, 400, and 500 series. Concerns were voiced with regard to auditing crowdfunding campaigns. Dr. Griffredo discussed this with our attorney, and both felt that the policy is clear in this regard. So just to summarize, funds received through approved crowdfunding efforts may not be received in the name of the district and may not be deposited into district bank accounts or commingled in any way with district funds. So that states kind of where we are. So if there is a need where somebody proposes a crowdfunding effort, it can be approved by the district, but the district will not be handling the money of it. In a paragraph related to employee restrictions, websites should be noted along with district-issued computer and email addresses. So, okay, policy 218, student discipline and the administrative guideline. We recommend that this go before the full board just because we want to make sure everybody is on board with proposed changes and understands in detail the changes that are being proposed. So for example, there's some behaviors that we're shifting from the lowest level, like a level 1, and we're proposing to move them to a level 2, which is a more severe rating. Level 3 would be the most serious. So for example, academic dishonesty, I believe, is moving from a 1 to a 2 is the proposal. And the committee didn't feel comfortable saying unilateral, like, hey, you know, this is what we're telling everybody it should be. We felt like there should be discussion. So if we could look at this briefly and look at those and just go over it and get a sense of if people are happy at the different levels. I just need to pop it up. Actually, I have an old copy here, but and any Dave and Jen, if you guys want to jump in too, please feel free.
I think everybody just kind of needs to look at it. It's what's been recommended by Regina that we do with our disciplinary levels. So I think unless somebody's concerned that something is leveled incorrectly, and then maybe you should go back and talk to Regina about that one, I think. Unless, because that's kind of really specific in the disciplinary policy.
So I guess if you're saying, Regina, that you're recommending to move some things, I'm okay with it. I've read what's there. I'm
so
okay
for
with it.
example, right now under level 1 for kindergarten through 5, we have academic dishonesty, which includes cheating, lying, plagiarism, as well as bullying and cyberbullying. So we're recommending that be moved to level 2. I'm just calling this out just so, and there's a few other examples where things are moving, that's why I'm saying. So there is information in the student discipline administrative guideline as well about school day versus after school. So just so we're on the same page, look it over, send any comments to the committee in advance.
If anybody's really concerned with that, when the school day and after school were different, we defined them within the policies. Because some things are defined within so many minutes, like within 30 minutes of the end or the beginning of the school day, and some things happen irrespective of time. So they're all, you just have to read the policies. If you're worried about when it happens, we stuck the language in there to tell you.
Okay, the dress code policy, we agreed to, the meeting was running about 2 hours, so we agreed to table further discussions until the next policy committee meeting on May 30th. I would kindly request that folks look over the two policies, one from Union Village Chadds Ford and one from TE, with their dress codes. Those are slightly more updated than what our old policy is, and I think we need to come to some happy solution on how we can update ours. So our next meeting is scheduled for May 30th, and all are welcome to attend. And there's a whole list of policies that we'll be reviewing, but they're listed, so I'm not going to read them.
I just want to take a moment and thank Steph and the committee for all the work they're doing, as well as the administrators who get the stack of policies each month and work with Dr. Goffredo to go through and provide suggestions to the committee and then send to the attorney. So I'm really appreciative of the process. It will put us in a much more consistent, implementable position. So thank you for that.
And I'm sorry he's not here, but yeah, committee members are doing a great job. And also Dr. Goffredo is really the one acting as quarterback because he's coordinating all the emails between the people. And quite frankly, he knows better than I do about who's affected by each of the policies. And he's done a great job of reaching out and just making sure that people who need to read them see them before they mysteriously get passed by us.
I think the difficult part is these haven't been reviewed in a long time, so that's why it's taking so long and why there's so many and so many changes. So it's a good thing getting them all cleaned up.
Running them through legal as well, just to make sure that we're doing things right.
I think the goal going forward is that they're more living policies as opposed to just online and that we never look at them. Because there's been a few that we've talked about, like food service, where we've said, well, we'll look at this now and this is where we are now, but we already know that in a year or two or three, it's going to have to switch. So I think the idea is to not be a once and done policy review and have to do this again.
This also speaks to what we spoke about a little bit last month about the difference between policy and administrative guideline. When we can tweak an administrative guideline, it's much less of a process. It doesn't involve, it allows us to be much more nimble as we move forward and really make sure that what we have in writing is actually what we're doing, which is really my paramount concern. So thank you. And Dr. Goffredo is missing us terribly. He is at a federal programs workshop, finding out that we may not be receiving the funding that we've received in the past. So we've been communicating multiple times today. He wants to lessen the blow and have us accept the messaging prior to him returning. So he is returning on Wednesday, and he'll have news for us, I'm sure. So.
Any other questions on policies? All right, well, on that good news of Dr. Goffredo and money, budget update. Chuck?
Really quickly, the budget has not changed in its bottom line either way, the total or the proposed millage non-increase. So the budget's still at 99.8 million. I will tell you that we did make one little change. We've got some new numbers on one of our healthcare benefits prescription. Reduced it by about $100,000. Unfortunately, I just moved that directly into the special ed account. As I've been telling you, that account is like, I'm like the coyote trying to catch the roadrunner. I just never quite catch them. Under revenues, local sources, we've adjusted our local sources and our state sources a little tighter now. We've added in the interim estimates that we've recently received. So we're now down to where the use of reserves, we've increased the use of reserves about $50,000. So it's 3.55 million, it was 3.5. We were about 800,000 difference last month. Now we're only 50,000, which we will just allocate to the use of reserves. Millage is 0. Impact on taxpayers. You should see a decrease in your taxes this year because we got $9 more from the state for the gaming money, divided by 12,000 tax bills. So, well, yeah, last year we got $1,024,098, and this year it's $1,024,107 or something like that. Yeah, well, this is a chart we've been sharing. As you can see, this is just with the Act 1 index, our millage rates, and what the Social Security increases have been. The Social Security CPI, which is a separate index in the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So we've managed over the long haul to stay about pace with Social Security. You adopted the preliminary budget April 17th. This will be the official final review, unless you have some big changes. Probably won't review it next week. We have to put the final presentation out for the public to look at. It's out there now. We will make one little modification, the one I described, and we'll put it back out there on Monday. Then we have to, Linda and I have to advertise it, which means Linda has to advertise it. By May 25th, and then you will hopefully adopt the final budget on June 5th, which has to be done before June 30th. Just a side note, I got a late email today from PASBO. Apparently they're pushing the legislation to stop reverse tax appeals again. So if you, I believe our legislators are not in that favor, but if you got a chance to talk to ours and just remind them, I'm going to do that tomorrow. So, any questions? Okay, while I'm up here, you have to elect your treasurer next month. It's a one-year term, or next week it's a one-year term. You have to reappoint the secretary. It's a 4-year term.
Real quick, so anybody's interested in being treasurer should just let Chuck know, and then he can email it the next couple days.
Okay. Anybody that's interested in being secretary to let Dave know? It's my job, it's okay. We are recommend. 4 years doesn't mean he has to stay here 4 years. That's no, okay, never mind. We are recommending reappointment of Whistler as Whistler Pearlstein as the solicitor. Their rates have remained the same. There's an engagement letter in there you all have. Every year we have to approve our depositories. That's the banks we're allowed to put money into. We have quotes. Linda secured quotes and kept the rate the same this will be 3 years in a row for the same rate for student athletics. We cover again, as we talked about in policy, if you remember, our student athletes are covered by a policy, an insurance policy. We offer the student accident insurance for anyone who may or may not feel they do not have adequate insurance to cover, because it's hard to explain to some people if your child breaks their leg falling off of one of our pieces of playground, it is not covered. We don't have insurance for that. No school has insurance for that. Most times your personal insurance covers it, but for people who may or may not have adequate insurance, this is $24 for school-time insurance for all year, or $85 gets your kid 24-hour insurance for a year. And it's what they call $100 carve-out, so they pay after your insurance pays. have a couple agreements in there. Contract renewal, that GCN is our training for harassment and things like that. It's a whole bunch of modules that the employees have to deal with. You'll notice quite a few donations there, and some overnight trip requests for 17, 18 for students, and the monthly reports.
What's the donations? What are they for? I see their money, is that like field trip donations or?
One at the Sugartown Elementary School donation is the water, the PTO is donating for water filling stations that go on to the, I believe General Wayne is a buddy bench. And the donation for Great Valley Middle School.
Is a series of things, I can put that there. There's about 10 things, is that right, Linda? One of them we can't do, so we'll put the list on the other 9. And when I say we can't do, our insurance doesn't like the piece of equipment they wanted to put in a classroom. So.
Thank you. All right, and then overnight requests are there for approval. Student overnights. And then all the monthly reports are there for review. NSBA report. Steph's going to give us an update of all the fun stuff she learned.
Sorry, guys. I only have a babysitter till 11 o'clock tonight, so I'll try to keep it a little shorter. Okay, first of all, thank you, because I was able to go to a meeting from March 25th to the 27th. Topics included, and it is a National School Board Association meeting. Topics included governance and executive leadership, innovation and district management, school board and superintendent partnerships, student achievement and accountability, and seminars about all different districts. I tended to focus on the suburban ones for obvious reasons. Also seminars about technology and learning solutions. There were a number of presentations that stood out for me, and I'm going to briefly just talk about 2, just so you can get a flavor of the type of things that I learned about when I was there. One seminar that I went to was one titled The 360-Degree Superintendent Evaluation, a tool for communication between the board and the superintendent. This was put on by the Penn Manor School District in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. They've only had 6 superintendents in 50 years. They each have averaged more than 7 years, which is somewhat unusual for superintendents who tend to have a shorter tenure. In 2005, this district launched a 360-degree superintendent survey. The board solicits input from teachers, staff, administrators, and community to assist in the evaluation of the superintendent. And at the session, they talked about the process and the methods that they go through in order to solicit the really good community feedback. It was pretty interesting to hear. I also went to a session that was presented by a school in Kansas City, Missouri. This seminar discussed the impact of a year-round school at Missouri's North Kansas City School. Their enrollment is 19,131. We're about a fifth of the size. So I went just because I was interested, not saying, hey, we need to do this here, but just to get some fresh ideas and see like what are other people doing, and hopefully to just provide some food for thought. This session was on year-round school and changing the conditions to eliminate summer regression. A point that was stressed was that by 5th grade, a middle-income student is about 3 years ahead of a low-income peer. And this is because while students learn at about the same rate during the 9 months of school, there's often significant regression over the summer that occurs for many, and it disproportionately affects the students from lower income. So it was really interesting to hear, and they've made tremendous strides in the academics in this district because they've addressed it. They looked at kind of like a root cause analysis of what's causing the slip, and really decided, okay, we're going to switch things around and go year round. And people said it couldn't be done, but they did it. And a large part of the presentation talked about just talking to the community, getting the parents on board. So they did things like give parents an option whether or not to participate, because they had enough schools that they were able to provide that flexibility, where obviously in a district like us, we don't have, dozens of schools to work with. So it was really interesting. So thank you all. And there's a lot more, so if anybody wants more, call me.
All right, thank you. All right, any other committee reports or board comments?
Can we just publicize that the end of the school year, the date that that's occurring because of the one snow day that we had?
Yes, good idea.
So the last student day will be Wednesday, June 14th. I'm looking for clarification, just because we've discussed it a number of times. Yes, and then the last teacher day will be the 15th. No, the 16th of June. Thank you. See, I'm looking at, thank you, Mrs. Citron and Dr. O'Toole. Yes, the last student day, June 14th, and the last teacher day is June 16th, Friday. Graduation is still June 9th, Friday, June 9th. I know that the seniors would prefer to stay till the 16th as well.
The seniors have asked for snow days, hurricane days, sunny days, whatever they can get off, right, Ram? Since they don't have to make them up. All right, the draft agenda is there for next week's meeting. At this point, I will open up the podium for any public comment on any item. Yep, please come to the podium, state your name and residency, and try to limit yourself to 3 minutes if possible. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Samantha Juan. I'm at 19 Birch Road in Malvern. And I was interested in the very first policy that you went over, Steph Gunderson, about the policy when kids don't have enough money in their lunch fund. Because there's been quite a bit of press on that recently, radio and print, about some school districts where when the kids don't have enough money, it's made evident to other kids in line. And I'm glad that we have a, that was my question. You said that the manager is able to have discretion on that. I just wanted to make sure the kids weren't called out in any way. Great, thank you. That was
The
great.
goal is to minimize that, and also if I think the food service does a good job, if they feel a kid like routinely doesn't have enough money, that they're looking to see if they qualify for potentially subsidized, free and reduced program, so that, the kid doesn't have to go every day and say, I don't have any money, so.
Great, thank you. That's good to know. Thank you very much.
All right, any other comments? All right, the board met in executive session beforehand to discuss some personnel and legal issues and a land question. We will not be going back to executive session. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Have a good evening, and hopefully we'll see you next week.